Hi, everybody. It's Mark and Mark Trowbridge. Hello.
Hello.
Uh, we're here to present to you the 9 a.m. turn, which was a long one, as I recall, and it kind of initiated the flow of how this attack went from my perspective and his defensive response, as the French are needing to scramble around to react to a much sharper attack than they anticipated due to the Tsar's counterattack card that we played. Just to remind you, the coalition here is able to deploy anywhere they want within the usual confines rather than specific areas for each of their columns. And they're not allowed to go into defensive order, and they have to slam into the French and hit them with a sudden death victory condition, which is kind of really a misnomer. It's really sort of a sudden death condition because what what happens is if I have enough victory objectives that he doesn't take back, so he gets back up to 9 where he starts, then the coalition wins by 1 p.m. So it's
just
a
just
struggle.
before you
Any
move off
and
that card, Mark, I think I
yeah,
also need to comment on what a fantastic haircut, what a fantastic hairstyle the Tsar's got there, hasn't he?
you
He
know
really
some
is quite contemporary.
I know. Well, I think someone commented to me on this. And they said, well, what you're missing, Mark, is that he was wearing some kind of helmet at the time. Maybe some kind of Zara's helmet so that
Yeah.
it forced his hair to
All
stick out.
right.
Because when you put a hat on, how it
Yeah.
messes up your hair.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anyway, that's what somebody told. I thought that was funny. Okay, so anyway, so we're going to proceed now and show
Yep.
you the second activation. I need to get this back on the pointer here. There we go. Right, so this is, Mark chose this screenshot, but he asked me to comment on it first. And so this shows my second activation. I actually won the initiative. Mark thought it was important for me to point that out. Hold on, let me
Yeah.
get this tab back. There we go.
Yeah. The Allies aren't supposed to get the initiative. Bloody hell, Mark. What are you thinking?
Actually, and I think I got the initiative a lot more in this game than I deserved. There's more times that I win the initiative as well. But in this case, this allowed me to move up. If you might recall, I was able to, let me get this. You can see I was able to get some of these guys of Fourth Corps across onto this plateau. Um, and then I attacked. It wasn't a very strong attack. I attacked this castle. Now you'll see that Mark has a 5-factor unit in this castle. This castle gets extra defense as long as you only have one unit with 5 strength points that's infantry.
Yeah. The castle can only um, what's the word? The castle can only
Accommodate maybe, or
accommodate is a good word. Thank you. Accommodate like 4 or 5 companies of infantry to line the walls, if you like. If you have more than that in there, it's just overkill. So it was advantageous to have a small but veteran unit in the castle.
right. So, and you'll see that I have to do the same thing later on eventually when I do take it, not to spoil the action here. But you'll see here that and I had a hard time um, with this because why does this keep showing? I don't want to see that. Okay, here we go. So I had a difficult time. You're going to see all these not cavalry, but infantry regiments, big ones here. I got one with this guy. Here's another one that they have that's Austrian. Then you can see that the Guard have one. And these are massive grand battalions, and I'm trying to get them up there to shoot
Oh, the batteries.
the
Yeah.
big batteries. Yes, and in fact, it's strange in this game. It seems strange to me, but maybe this was normal, Mark, because you're more of a historian on Napoleonics. But um, I sure seem to have a lot of artillery as the coalition,
The
and
Russians did. Their order of battle was mapped out very differently, and they were very artillery heavy.
hmm,
And each of their formations really had grand batteries in internal to their organization, to their corps. Whereas the French could create grand batteries and often did from corps reserves, but they had much more of a smaller inherent artillery to their formations.
Yeah, I don't doesn't show on this screenshot, but it will later. A lot of the French formations are 4-factor formations, 6-factor formations. So for them to they can gather them up, but they need to have multi-hex grand batteries because you want to get at least 10 points to get an extra -1 on your shot, essentially.
Also, the Russians used a lot of heavier guns. The French 4-strength batteries are 9-pounders, and the French 6-strength batteries are 12-pounders.
Okay.
So those 15-strength Allied batteries, Russian batteries, are probably 12-pounders, and lots of them. So
like those old big Turkish guns, boom, used. Maybe not as bad as that. But
so anyway, what Marc's gently explaining there is he's managed to cross the Goldback stream, right where I didn't want him to, right where there's a huge gap in the French lines, and puts the fear of God into me. And Davout, who is holding Sokolnitz village there with not very many men, is spread far too thin to be able to counterattack by himself.
Yeah, Davout's right here. Holding Sokolnitz.
All he can do is garrison existing objectives and hope he can hold on until he's reinforced. I wasn't expecting the Allied Fourth Corps to get across that river as fast as Marc did, and it put me put me right on the back heel, I must admit.
Well, I had to do what I could, and you'll see also, and I think we mentioned this in the last one here. I've got this one of my best corps, the right wing, is one of the best led corps as well, trying to hold off the main French units that are going to be trying to exact revenge, basically, right, Marc? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the Kabelnitz to Sokolnitz road is closed, so the only way to reinforce is on the French side of the Goldback, and there's no one in the vicinity right now.
No.
If we move on to the next screenshot, I'm not sure if that shows.
Yeah. This one shows a bigger scope of it, and this is my 4th activation. You can see I'm here. Let's get you back in the picture. Okay, so here I am trying to take out this Schloss. Now, you can see I've reduced him, but he's still in there.
Yeah, they've suffered 200 casualties, haven't they?
That's, all these thousands of Austrians and Russians pounding on the door. And look at this. This is the scary part. Marc has, unfortunately, been able to...
I brought down Murat's cavalry corps. Right. Because they're fast. And that's all I could really get down there quickly. Because the French cavalry corps there, it's the reserve cavalry corps of the army, and there's lots of them. It's a mixture of light and heavy cavalry with horse artillery, and they move twice as fast, of course, as most of the infantry formations, if not faster. So, is it going to be enough? This is what I don't know. All I'm trying to do there is to stop further enemy forces from getting around and exploiting that penetration.
Yes, okay. And, not to get, let me get this straight here. Okay. Don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but you're going to see that these, that's a terrible, need to up my game here, Marc. Okay, so.
The artistic.
Yeah, the artistic elements here. This light cavalry of Murat is pretty good. It's got as you can see, a quality factor of 8. Versus generally what you see for this. This is not the best corps on the planet. Most of these guys are, conscripts or something, Marc? I got a couple of good units. Look at this 15 banger here. But these cavalry will come in, and he's got a lot of other ones that are 10 morale. The heavy cuirassiers that will come in, they're afraid of nothing. And we'll blast through these lines. And one of the hardest decisions you have to make when you're an infantry regiment in this game is, do you want to try to square up, or do you want to try to shoot and maybe get the cavalry to retreat? Um, and honestly, that's a lot easier if you have at least a morale of 7. You really,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you fail to square up, it means your lines are open and the cavalry actually gets an extra modifier on top of it.
yeah.
Right, Mark? So
That's right.
yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next slide then, perhaps. Let's see what we got. Okay, so continuing on. Now, this one, Mark says French activation 4, heavy cavalry charge. And there we see it
Yes,
right here.
it's where the second cuirassiers are. If you want to highlight that, right next to your infantry.
Yes, the second cuirassiers. Here we
And
go.
what's happened here is Murat has been able to activate. He's used his last activation of the turn, and he's charged. And
Right,
what he's done is,
right here.
yeah,
And he's charging these guys here.
yeah, and they did a lot of damage to them, but they didn't destroy them. So I was hoping for them to majestically sweep down the slope and link back up with the castle. But no, I think I rolled really, really badly on that charge.
Yeah, I think it was probably a -5, but you rolled a 4, a net 4, which means I just reduce.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't manage to clear them away, but at least the French are now counterattacking.
Yeah. Oh, they were. And I still haven't taken anything over here.
No.
You know, I was getting a bit frustrated that nothing was happening, as I usually do. I'm quite impatient, which makes me a very aggressive player. And you'll see sometimes in this game where but the aggressive side of me takes over from the sensible side, where I start doing attacks that are like Mark's like, probably, I don't know exactly. He'll talk about it later, but he's like, yeah, I'm glad Marc put his best units attacking over here because that's not going to get him anywhere. But those are the kind of mistakes I'm still making in the game. Anything else on this slide,
what's
Marc?
happening here.
Yeah.
I think in a grand tactical way is that the Allies are doing what they're really supposed to do. They've got the advantage. They had the initiative at the beginning of this turn, and they're driving forward. Their hope is obviously to take the castle, to take Sokolnitz village, because once they've broken through there's no French infantry left unless Davout's reinforcements come on, and there's no guarantee of that. So Marc was absolutely right to do what he did and to keep on pushing and to keep on activating anything in that area until he manages to take these little series of villages.
Yeah,
and
the less Davout activates, the better, right, Marc?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing that he had to activate Murat to charge me because he couldn't activate Davout. But Davout has a hard time getting his reinforcements on at 9 a.m., doesn't he, Marc?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
He has an extra +2 or something, too.
Yeah. It's not a very good chance.
Right. As you can see, I'm still trying to figure out where to put these batteries. I got confused here a lot. Sometimes I'd look at this 15-3. This is an infantry unit. And hey, I got a battery. No, it's not a battery. What have I done? What have I done? Okay. So I'm still jockeying around down here with that. Shall we move on to the next slide,
Yeah,
Marc?
sure.
Okay. All right. So here we go.
What happens in this one?
Here we go. Oh, yes. This is mine. The
focus
of the action.
It's actually the same action, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see everything's been kind of activated. This is activation 5.
Something's changed at Sokolnitz Castle there, I can see.
Yes, finally I got the guard up there, and he wasn't able to shoot at me and get me flipped over. Although, actually, no, he did. You know, I was one of the things that irked me in this game is that every time Marc shot at my guardsmen, they took a reduction. And I've got some nice guardsmen there, 10/4 movement, and then a 10 factors of when they're in full strength. You know, they're hard to stop. They're very effective. Yeah. But he kept whittling away at them. But I would say, though, the Russian Guard, even now, is still instrumental in figuring out who's going to win this game.
Yeah.
They've taken a heavy toll through this, and this is just the beginning of that. So, what else here? I just wanted to focus in on a couple of things that you might want to be aware of when we play this game. Um, Whenever cavalry is next to infantry like this, it becomes fatigued and it cannot prep charge. So it's sometimes it's good to be next to the cavalry if you can survive it when it first charges you like these guys did.
Yeah,
Okay. The other point is that cavalry, um, this was a real problem for me because when he had a French unit in the castle, I was inside his zone of control. That means every cavalry unit that attacks is considered to be flanking.
yeah.
Okay. And flanking units um, get
They
double.
double their strength, don't they?
Yeah, and I think there's even any failed morale check. It's not by 3, but I think any failed morale check by the defending infantry is a rout.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it's a horrible feeling. I was pretty lucky over here, I have to admit. I need to remember those times I'm lucky and not forget them. Okay, that's the biggest problem that you can have in a game like this, or any game, is the bias, psychological bias, right? That you have a bad set of rolls and it's like, oh, I never get what I want.
That's right.
Marc always gets what he wants, right? But Marc will, has a loftier view of things, and he kind of looks at this as, uh, as an ebb and flow situation. So it's a more even-handed approach, and I think it gives you an edge when you're playing because you don't get
My
attached to
personal
the
morale
results.
tends to not to suffer based on one or two bad dice rolls. I just think that what's going to happen next is the adverse, is the opposite of that. I think that's because I've got a sales background, so I'm used to thinking if I fail on the first two sales pitches, I'll probably get it on the third. So it's counting your failures towards the next victory. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe that's a psychological thing. I don't know.
That's really interesting, Marc, because I used to spend, about 20 years or 15 years of my career in sales.
Yeah,
And you're right. Each no that you get is progress towards the next yes,
yeah,
keeping you in the field and going out to get no's so you get a yes. And you can't take it too personally.
yeah.
You can't. But in the field of battle, when you're playing with dice, it's for some reason psychologically it's different for me.
It's because
Um,
it's out with our control. That's the problem. We can only load up the modifiers as best we can, and then everything else is random. So
right. And yeah, that's certainly a key thing to keep in mind. But the other thing is to remember that even though it seems like the dice should balance out, I've already rolled 3 bad rolls at 1 to 1. I need 3 good ones now. No, no. Every
no,
event is
no.
independent. Okay, that's
Yeah.
only true before you roll all of the dice rolls.
Don't spoil it for me. My entire wargaming life is based on the premise that if I roll a 12, the next time I roll, I'll get a 2. Now you're ruining wargames for me, Hannah.
I don't think so. That, yeah, I look. The other counter to that, Marc, is to say, yeah, I'll counter that. Look, the overall dice rolls at 1 to 1. I'll roll the low ones and you roll the high ones. It balances
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another argument for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a close
Anywho,
up on the hot and heavy action. This is an activation 5. And now Marc has put this is French activation 6.
yeah.
And this is
Oh, Davout gets
Davout
in on the
leads a
action. This one.
charge. Oh, right, your cavalry came in this time. Wow, look at
Yeah,
that.
Davout, who was lurking in the background there.
Sorry, getting that
It's
straight.
all
There we
right.
go. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's led
Davout's
his
here,
cavalry in,
so
and
he's
he's managed
coming
to
in.
clear away. He's
Okay.
managed to defeat some of Fourth Corps and push them back across the goal back. So now the French do have a line, a zone of control battle line, if you like, that is harder for Marc to exploit. But you still hold the castle.
Right. Right. But I was still kind of holding you off, and the cavalry doesn't do well if it's maintaining itself in the front line. You really want to punch, right,
Yeah,
Marc, and then be able to withdraw.
Yeah, and I
And
can't take the castle back with cavalry. You can't do it. What are they going to do? They can ride round it, but that's it. So I've lost the castle, and I've had to accept that. I've got no infantry reserves to be able to counterattack. All I could do was to try and see off your
right.
infantry. There
But
were
here
low
I think
quality
you
infantry.
decided also, didn't you withdraw from Telnitz at this
Yeah.
point?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, and
You
that was a
decided that was just too risky. Okay, I'm going to lose that point there. So
yeah.
he withdrew and let me take that. I have to say that that particular corps down there, my corps, they didn't actually really accomplish much by themselves. They
Yeah.
only had to count on Davout retreating for them because
Yeah.
although they have a lot of force there, um, it's very
Well,
flimsy. The Allies are a bit flimsy, I would say. I don't know, like
what you've
their
been able to
morales are
do is
6 and 7, right?
you managed to get an infantry regiment across the Goldback into the woods, which is it's the one on the screen there, the Jaeger regiment. And
Oh, these
once you've done
guys,
that,
right?
I just pulled back. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to cut off the bridge, right? But I think later on, this guy does not doesn't actually handle the
No, I think he
responsibility of
gets
his
routed, or
location very well.
he gets forced to go back to the Allied lines again, doesn't he, later on? But we'll move on to the next screenshot and see if
Yeah,
it's
let's see what's
happening.
going on. Okay, so this is the activation 7 now.
Oh,
And I don't know what's going on. Lands, you say lands advances. So this is
yeah.
where the lands is a powerful, powerful force.
It's all
Uh,
these light blue ones, and he's just deployed.
right.
And he starts to move down. This is in the northern flank of the battlefield, so it's way away from right at the other end of the field from the action we've been talking about so far.
Right.
But I think it's important for everyone to know what's going on this side of the field. And the answer is not a lot at the moment, but Lanner's deployed forward. And
Let's move this over here. I've
and
got yeah, I don't have much going on yet over here.
no.
Um, and I really didn't want a lot going on at this point in time, to be honest with you.
So what the French strategy here was that land that light blue car with all those that nice line of units all lined up there.
Yeah.
The idea, their orders are to actually to move south. Marc doesn't know that at this point, but
They're
their
moving
orders
south, that's right. So they're
but
heading
to move south, and
that
because
way.
there's some victory locations down there,
Hmm.
and because I'm losing victory locations left, right, and centre, at the minute I needed to apply some pressure to threaten some of the Allied weaker areas, or potentially weaker. I didn't actually know if
Yeah, no, that was a weak area for me. Um, I was concerned at this time that Lands was going this way.
Yeah, I decided not to do that. And the reason I decided not to do that was the separation of forces. If there's one thing I've learned, it's try and mutually support each corps with another corps. Because the way the
Yeah,
activation system works in this game is if you've got two formations next to each other, they can support each other. But if they're not, then you can't. And you soon run out of activations in any given turn.
meanwhile, over here, my deployments were quite defensive. I don't know
Mm,
if Mark ever knew this, but tell him now. Initially, this guy's orders were to go north,
yeah,
and this guy's orders were to go, I think, around here. Maybe it was there. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
There's a victory location on top of this
Right. Yeah,
hill.
there's a big battery up here. One of the few French, let's zoom in on that. It's one of the few French 15 banger.
Yeah, and it's a fixed battery. I can't actually move it. It's in position there. It's been fortified, I think, and
Right.
can't move. So
Well,
I
at
don't want
least
to
the
leave.
wheels have been taken off. It doesn't have any extra defenses, though.
Yeah.
Yep. Fortified. I don't know. I guess they moved it up. Maybe they were planning to fortify it. Um, Or maybe it was a deterrent. I don't know. What was Napoleon thinking? He wanted them to go south, didn't he, towards Davout? Wasn't that the idea? So this was
Well, I think it was just to
set
hold
up
that.
to,
It was to hold that flank. There was never going to
yeah,
be any major action there. I don't think in Austerlitz. The main attack was going to be in the centre.
right. Okay. So quite an interesting situation here. And this is activation 7. I think we mentioned last time the average number of activations Okay, here we go with the only at the start of the turn is about 14 total.
Yeah.
There's about 7 turns for each side.
And this one has 23.
Did
This
it?
turn has 23 activations.
Oh. Well, this is my yeah, I wanted to point this out
Yeah.
uh, because it's not really evident here. Okay. And I don't know exactly when Mark realized that he needed infantry, but I think just as a general principle, you don't send in cavalry without some infantry somewhere, right? So he had it's not you can't see it, but right here, this stack right here, these 2 stacks have some of Soult's infantry in them, okay? But they're out of command.
Yeah.
So hour after hour, you see them inching their way forward. It's quite funny actually. They go, yeah, here, and then here, here,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. But eventually, they're like, yeah, they're close enough to the castle. But this is for future. I just wanted to show you
Yeah.
that this is again
It,
principles of good play.
we're now at the 1 p.m. turn, aren't we, in our battle? And it's 4 hours later, and they're just in a position to try and counterattack the castle now.
Right, but Mark hadn't forgotten, and that's the important point. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, one thing to remember also is that Mark had this cavalry charge card, which allows you to pick 4 stacks of cavalry and go charge. They can be from any formation, and we had some discussion about the efficacy of this card. Some of the we'll talk about this later, maybe
Yeah.
as a wind up here.
Yeah, when we
But
get to it.
But anyway, Mark was, and I knew he had the card, and I was afraid of it. The thing is, the threat of it is sometimes better than the actual use of it. It could be, right? I don't know. All right, let's
Well,
get.
my problem here on that flank there was I had the main strength of my army's cavalry there, and the terrain doesn't support their use because you are in covered terrain or on the allied side of the stream or in woods or orchards or castles and villages, and so all I can do is stop you moving further forward.
Right.
I couldn't take locations back with them.
And so, yeah, that's true because there's a lot of woods and orchards and stuff over here. It's towns, which are not good for cavalry. Now, maybe Mark was, by this time he might have been aware, but the guard's target, though, was to take this crossroads.
Yeah.
And these guys here, Mark let me go ahead and get in. At some point, I can't remember, it wasn't quite yet, but Mark vacates Solkolnitz as well and leaves it open.
Yeah, that's right. I've forgotten about
And
that.
I tried to activate my commander of the guards twice so I could march in. I think it's at 10 a.m. this happens, and
Yeah.
so I'm premature. But I tried to activate to get in there, and Mark's like, "Oh, well, you didn't get in. You know what? Let me go back."
That's right.
It's like those Russians are coming. Well, then they don't want it. Well, so
I think what happened there was some of Davout's reinforcements finally make an entrance.
Okay.
And so Davout has forces on hand that he can feel more confident that he can put up a fight.
Right.
But anyway, that hasn't happened yet.
I mean, this guy's pretty lonely, right? 8 factor. It's got an L on it, so L means they're sharpshooters, and they shoot a little bit better than regular infantry, but it's really hard to count on infantry to defend itself by shooting.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you got to defend yourself in melee, which I guess was a characteristic of the Napoleonic era in general. I don't know how well this game portrays the infantry fire compared to other games, Mark. Maybe you could comment on that quickly. Because you've played a lot of these different games.
Well, the interesting thing, if reading the designer's notes, is that even when you're doing melee attacks, which is a separate mechanism from fire attacks, the melee is considered to be the troops have advanced to within firing range and are volleying at each other at 100 yards or 50 paces. Yep. So the melee attacks aren't always going in with a bayonet. it's closing to within extremely effective fire range and blasting away at each other, and which
okay.
and so the results of that can result in a retreat or a rout or nothing, and
Right.
it's not always considered to be a melee isn't always considered to be a bayonet charge. Let's
I
put it
see.
that way.
I see. The melee represents close range fire,
Very close range, because even when
where
you've
the
got
accuracy is just the massive infantry. If you shoot into it, somebody's going to
yeah.
take a hit. I see.
Bearing in mind that each hex here is 250 meters, so
Hmm.
you can be adjacent to an enemy unit, but still 250 meters away, which was, the effective range of the muskets was probably 75 to 100 meters to be really effective.
Okay, so if you think about what this means, then if you're in the center and they're in the center, that's 250 meters away.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the melee, when it comes in, then you're closing to 50 meters or whatever, or
yeah,
even
yeah.
bayonet range at
That's
some
how
point.
I narratively see it. Yeah.
Okay, that's quite useful to
Mm.
visualize. Thanks, Mark. Okay, good. So, yeah. So this is we've talked about this. This is basically uh, what I wanted to say about Soult's infantry. You can see right here it's coming in again. Um, this shows a bigger picture. This is the
Yeah.
French Activation 9. What did you want to say about this, Mark? It looks like you had
Well, this is where
Soult versus
Salt in the center.
Bagration.
The
Right.
ones with the yellow stripe, have now deployed forward and are attacking Bagration's Russian corps, which are the ones with the red stripe. So there's an almighty clash there. Those two forces are not evenly matched, but fairly close. And
Yeah, Soult
there's
was
one hell
busy
of a
though,
battle.
because he was spread out. You had him going this way. You
Yeah,
had stuff going this way. He was really too spread out to manage by himself.
yeah,
I don't know. At some point, is Napoleon around here? Is this Napoleon here?
yeah. That's Napoleon there.
Okay.
And the intent there was to try and push. You never know. You never know what's going to happen, even if there's a solid enemy line. When you do your artillery fires, you can blast away and hit nothing, or you can blast away and have a quite dramatic effect and create a hole. And if you look very carefully, at the bottom of that yellow circle, there's a stack of routed
Oh, right.
units, and that is one of those holes I was just talking about. They were routed by artillery fire.
Yeah, they
Which
probably were
creates
right here,
opportunity.
weren't they, or something?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Which then enables more effective attacks in the next activation and so on. So it was just interesting to paint a picture. There's the forces have now clashed not only in the left where we're deep in the weeds, but in the center there's two enormous corps about to go into battle. And the Russians are well supported on their right by the 5th Cavalry Corps, which is actually very, very powerful.
You're talking
ones with the
about my
brown
5th Cal,
stripes.
they sort of beige-looking units here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Right here, my 5th Cavalry Corps.
And I
Plus
think if
I also have some good cavalry with Bagration as well.
I think the next screenshot might
Well, we'll clear that up a
might
bit. Okay, let me. Sorry, I'm getting out of control.
you're always out of control.
Actually, my screenshot. This is screenshot 6.5. So I
Oh,
know
you're
this.
highlighting the Imperial Guard, yeah.
Yeah. This was really a problem for me because I didn't know where these guys were going to go.
Yeah,
He had them set up brilliantly back here. They'd moved there from the beginning of the scenario, and I didn't know their orders. They were out of range for me to understand. So they could have either gone this way. Let me get the arrow key here. That's not the arrow key. Whoops. Let me get rid of that. Hold on.
he's out of
I don't
control
know what's
again.
going on with Skype. This little window didn't keep coming up last time, and sometimes when they up the software, then the glitches happen like that. So anyway, were they going this way, or were they going that way?
You weren't sure.
I didn't know.
Hmm.
And although the Guard is not like the massive force that it is later on in the war, it's compact and powerful with both cavalry, artillery, and infantry. Um, and, there's nothing you can do when that guard. I mean, all you can do is
It's a
whittle it
very
down.
effective combined arms little force, isn't it? It's just like a small corps, the smallest corps. But all of they've got maximum quality infantry, maximum quality cavalry. Even their artillery is mostly horse artillery. It's super fast and able to keep up. And whatever they attack, they pretty much go through like a knife through butter. But they
Usually
can't keep
do.
on doing that
Yes.
for the entire length of the battle. So you've got to use them judiciously. So they're a very, very good punch. They're one of the few formations that can probably punch through a heavily defended enemy line by themselves. But you probably can't do that more than once because they're going to suffer casualties and they're going to be weakened. So the next time you come to do that, you're gonna suffer. So
yes, and one thing that should be pointed out here. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay. You I just want to point out right here, like these batteries here. Okay.
yeah,
There's a range advantage that the French have. So even though there's a +1 for long range, the Allies get a +2 for long range. So I think in this it's +2 even if it's only 3 hexes, I think.
yeah. In the designer's notes, Walter had said that the Allied gunners at this time of the war were not as well trained. They had the gear, they looked cool, but they weren't as effective at using their artillery.
Whereas Napoleon, being an old artillery guy, he really made sure his artillery was up to snuff, I suppose.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Let's move on to the next screenshot Mark wanted to comment on here. This is the Soult pushing forward at me here, and Soult was a deadly
we've
force.
clashed at this point. Yeah, we've clashed, and there's been retreats and routes and on either side. But Soult is now pushing forward to take the village at the bottom right of that screenshot.
Yes. No. That's exactly right. And this was the big problem eventually that the Allies have, and it's starting to manifest even right now. There's this victory hex. There's this one. There's 2 more on top of the hill over here.
Yeah.
So I'm really rushing to get 3 or 4 victory points before he gets to these.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's like trying to defend over there and then rush and get through my guys. I would say that my right wing and Soult they beat each other up.
Oh yeah.
It was really, really devastating. Soult, we were joking. I would say Soult's always getting racked up in this in this game because he's right in the middle of things almost no matter what.
Yeah.
But
there's an almighty clash there, but it was fun. There's a punch and counter punch, and it was fairly balanced. Our results were fairly balanced in that particular part of the battle, and it was fun.
Yeah,
it really created entertainment value because once one side got hammered, it was the other guy's go, and he would hammer back, and it wasn't like one of us was trying to defend there. We were both attacking each other.
That's right. Yeah, I was doing my best. I needed to hold him off, and in this game, I think, it's harder I don't know. Maybe it seems to me it's harder to defend than it is to counterattack. I don't know if that's a feature of the game. I like it. The game doesn't really encourage you to be passive, and since I can't actually go into defensive formation, which actually the defensive formation is really sometimes not that usable. It's really only good against cavalry, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
It actually is not beneficial when there's artillery shooting at your units that are ready to go into square. They die even faster. So
I think it's superfluous, the defensive formation.
Is it?
I think it is because
I haven't seen you use it.
When a unit is under threat from cavalry, you've always got a chance to be able to form square, unless you're adjacent to an enemy infantry unit already. They prevent you. But the defensive order allows an entire formation to kind of enter square, if you like. Well, That doesn't really happen on the battlefield. It's a localized reaction to an enemy cavalry threat. So it doesn't kind of make sense. I mean, Waterloo is the best example of entire formations entering square, but that's because Ney was leading 10,000 of the Emperor's last cavalry reserves into battle to try and win. But
in that battle and in this game, they all start pretty much in defensive order for the Allies.
Yeah.
So if you buy the Waterloo game, you get the wrong idea about the impact of using defensive orders. Then you start playing a game like Austerlitz, you're like, well, I don't really want to be in. I mean, if you're in defensive orders, you're not allowed to move. You're not allowed to melee.
Yeah. Austerlitz is truly a battle of maneuver, whereas Waterloo was fairly static for the Allies, wasn't it?
Yeah, but still, you wonder about the the efficiency or the effectiveness of going into the defensive orders. I have a hard time finding. I mean, actually, there's an opportunity for me to use defensive orders, and I think I did so illegally at one point.
Yeah.
It didn't. I forgot that I wasn't allowed to.
It made no difference.
But were never attacked over there at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Although if I'd lost the game, then I would have said it was an illegal victory because you entered.
Yeah. Well, that's usually my excuse. I would have won if you hadn't done that. Come on, Mark. You know that you didn't deserve that. I'm terrible. I know I am. All right, here we go. Next one. But at least I can recognize it, right? Okay. All right. So the next one is the end of the turn. Finally, Mark wanted to point out the linear positions pretty far away from each other, aren't we, Mark? But
we deserve points for having the best looking, smartest formations.
We did. I mean, my advanced guard down here, that's let me get I'm gonna have to figure out this problem that I've got with this setup here. But yeah, if you look at, I finally deployed Dokhturov's force, as you can see, in a very nice formation here. Okay. And then I had the advanced guard sort of in a scattered way. And he's ready up here now. He's deployed
Bernadotte.
That's Bernadotte. Okay, and then and then down here lands and here. So basically, this, how far is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. They're a kilometer from each other, more than a kilometer.
Yeah.
And they're just looking at each other. The commanders of the battlefield are, busy elsewhere, as we've already demonstrated.
But the key there is, what were the orders? What were Dokhturov's orders at that point, Mark?
And I don't know.
Was it to take the Stanton with them?
I think it was. I think by then it was to take the Stanton. I was hoping to, if this ever opened up, then maybe I could pressure Marc. One of the things I can do to pressure Marc or the French is to attack another area, forcing him to use his precious activations over there. Why are the activations precious? Because there's the issue of time. And in a lot of these turns, we rolled very quickly the first roll that moves the sun across the sky. But then we had activation after activation after activation before the turn ended.
Yeah.
So you're always like suffering a little bit. And initially I thought, I want long turns as the Allies. But then I'm like, you know what? Actually, the longer the turns, I think it really benefits more the French. What do you think by now, Marc?
I was always afraid of long turns because you needed the time to punch through to get your objectives. You're the one with the time pressure on this because you have to achieve your victory objectives by 1 p.m. The French do not.
The French don't until they do, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. I want long turns in the early game.
I think it turns over, it tilts dramatically in favour of the time being a time pressure for the French if the Allies have taken enough victory objectives off the French, and then the French have to counterattack.
Then you're right. I see. Yeah, the time long turns are better for the Allies in the beginning then of this game. And then
Yeah,
maybe around 10 or 11 a.m., then they want short turns
yeah.
because they're hoping the French won't have time to come back.
And
Yeah,
spoiler
that's a good
alert, all
point.
of our turns last like forever.
Centuries, a couple of the, yeah, it's like the universe has come and gone twice before we
Yeah,
finally.
I know, yeah. We're still
I made
fighting.
that complaint at one point. So this was the northern flank. Then I think Mark has another one here.
Oh, I did. Yeah, end pictures, northern flank,
And
and
then
so
this
what's
is
this one? End
the
of turn.
center end of turn,
Yeah, yeah. There's a few routing
showing the
units there.
Bagration situation, my cavalry here. I'm going to stop doing this next time. I'm going to figure out how to do this better, Mark. But basically, yeah, my cav right here. I've got a corps here that's defending that city. Right now, it looks like, okay, I didn't feel bad about this, but it's only 9 a.m., right?
Yeah,
But
the
look,
guard have moved down to just you're starting to see
yeah.
the guard are just north of Kobelnitz there now. They're with Napoleon,
Ah,
and
that's a very, very good point. Let's focus in on that. So the guard, but notice this, he still has some of these guard over here where they can go either way.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is his cavalry, and there's more up
Mm,
here. Okay.
mm,
And his infantry is committed to this flank, and there's Napoleon. This is Mark's realizing, well, Soult getting so spread out, he's going to need some help um, commanding the troops. And Mark, maybe you can explain that special command activity you're allowed to do
yeah,
once
an
a.
army commander once per turn and only once per turn, even though he activates twice, can directly command a number of stacks equal to his leadership factor. Well, Napoleon, being Napoleon, has the highest leadership factor of in this game. It's a 3, so he can activate and then directly command three stacks within his command range, which is usually 6 hexes.
So here's
And they
Napoleon.
get an extra turn, and they can fire, move, attack. Now that
Right.
with
Pick 1, 2, 3 of these
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
and then make a third assault. Okay.
So it gives extra attack opportunities to forces that are within Napoleon's kind of reach,
And I've got
even when they're
Kutuzov who can
exhausted.
do that. Sorry, Mark. Uh,
Yeah,
I was just pointing out I have an army commander, Kutuzov, who's pretty good. He's
yeah,
got 2 stacks. That's about as best as the Allies ever do, I think. Maybe
yeah. His
Wellington gets
leadership
a
factor's
3.
2. I think Wellington might have 3. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
in this game, yeah, Kutuzov has 2, which is still fairly powerful. I mean, that's enough to put together a big infantry assault or a big cavalry charge, or even 2 big stacks of artillery firing away. So it can make a difference, big difference.
Right. And I was using my Kutuzov with my guard, and he's got Napoleon over here with his guard and or Soult. So right now it's like, yeah, okay, I see him coming, but pretty soon they're going to be here. And
Yeah,
that's a lot of a different fielding once you have the guard here. Okay. So I think, was there another screenshot? I think I had, yes, here's the south end
yeah.
of turn in the southern flank here. There we go.
We're starting to see more routed units on the field down there now, aren't we?
Yeah, this is where the weakness of my units comes into play, where you've got, a 6 morale, 6 or 7 morale. He's got some routed units, but up at the top, Soult had a huge stack of units rout, and
Yeah,
I think they never have come back into the game. So it's hard to keep these routed units. Why? Because you have to activate a commander to try to rally them, or have a card or something like that.
yeah,
Um, and sometimes routed units, um, they really can't help with the defense. They do take up a hex, I suppose. But yeah, so there's been heavy fighting, a lot of heavy clashes. Anything else on this screen, Mark, that you want to?
yeah. Well, the interesting thing there is the Russian guards have taken every hex except for Sokolnitz village itself, where the victory flag is. If we look, there's one French
Ah,
unit left,
right,
and
right
the red
here.
stripe one.
This
Yeah,
is right before you decide I'm out of here, I think. I
yeah,
think it's.
yeah.
But this was the end of the
It's not
turn, so
looking
you
good.
still had in left, and I think I assaulted here and failed. Okay.
Yeah.
I had I mean, considering all the artillery pounding the heck out of that hex and everything like that.
Oh, I was lucky. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but this is part of the charm of the game, though. It's like, look at these men hold off against all odds. This can happen in this game.
Yeah.
Um, and you really get a great narrative from the game. So I think I have one more, if I may switch it now, Mark.
Sure. Do the old
Okay.
switcheroo.
This is the casualties at this point.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the cemetery. Funny when they call it the cemetery. But it's pretty even at this point. Most of the losses have been for Davout,
Yeah. The
for
red
the
stripe.
French
Yeah.
side here. Mine have been on that very weak fourth column here.
Yeah, they're the casualties from the cavalry charges, aren't they?
Right. So now we talked about this a little bit, but not in depth. But the victory conditions normally will not apply for total casualty points. However, if one side beats the other side by at least 300 victory points, then they can't lose by whatchamacallit, sudden
Automatic.
death,
Yeah,
sudden death
sudden
victory.
death. Yeah.
So a strategy can be, and it's probably easier for the French to do this, if they can wipe out enough of the coalition, even if they lose 10 objectives, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They avoid losing it.
Well, it's because they've essentially they've defeated the enemy field army to such a wide differential in terms of casualties. Then they've kind of won anyway, even if the enemy are holding victory locations. If their field army is defeated,
right, or at least if you've killed enough of them by this point in time,
yeah.
I guess Alexander would have combed his hair and said, "You know what? We need to call off the assault. Bring me my horse. Let's go back to Vienna or wherever they went after this battle." So that's kind of the summation
But
of
it was
everything for a 9
that was
o'clock.
a good turn for us, wasn't it? That 9 a.m. It was busy, kept us both involved. We were both attacking in different areas. There's lots of counter attacking. There was no one sitting on the behind.
Right.
A lot of most of the forces are now deployed. We can see each other. We can see roughly where we're both aiming at.
And I feel more confident now. I can see where Marc's attacks are coming. That's not stopping him from doing them, but at least I can try to anticipate these cavalry charges. Try to anticipate, okay, I don't want to be in a flanked position because he's going to double his cavalry. I want to stay out of his preparation range so that he has to take an extra +2 when he attacks.
Yeah.
All of these little things, start coming into play. But there's still more nuances beyond that. As I mentioned before, my penchant for attack can cause me to do attacks that really might be out of place. Now, probably not at this point. Okay, but later on, I need to do well in future games. Really, and we'll talk about this more when we see this happen. Okay, and of course, this is my particular perspective. Marc actually hasn't commented on that. But he may or may not agree once I bring it up. But that's for 12 o'clock. Next time, though, Marc, 10 o'clock. Is it a long turn again, or what
It
happened?
is. I think it was another 22 activations, which is way above average. And we've really hammered each other. It's an exciting turn, the next one.
Well, we've really had a good time with this so far. I'm really impressed so far, and still remain impressed. Even we're now in the last turn, 1 p.m., and it's impressively balanced, I think.
It's a great scenario, yeah. If you've only ever played the full regular Battle of Austerlitz in this system, I can recommend it. Even solo play, you can have great fun with this because of the activation system, and I'd really recommend trying this strategic variant.
Okay.
And, not a luxury, of course. All the guys on the real battlefield, it's 2024 now, so 219 years ago.
Wow.
The guys on this real field, not one of them, and there was hundreds of thousands of them, not one of them would have thought that there's an American guy and a British guy sat at computers,
that's right,
which they didn't even know existed, replaying their battle, but with a different variant. I mean, they would have laughed.
Ah.
Wouldn't they?
Well, even think about this, Mark. Back in 1995, before the internet, yes, those of you who have been born much earlier than us, there was a time when there was no internet.
Yeah.
Mark and I wouldn't have been doing this either.
No,
We would have
that's
been
true.
lucky to meet each other at some random tournament if he came to the
Mm,
States or if I went to England for a tournament. That's before all of this vassal stuff and everything. Everything was done like that. So, even we are privileged in our own lives to be able to do this.
yeah,
So,
we are. Yeah,
um,
it puts it into perspective if we roll a few bad dice, doesn't it? We're
I'll
lucky to
never,
be doing this anyway.
never, never, Mark, never. I'm just kidding. Hope so. Maybe sometime. Maybe
Yeah.
sometime. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. If you've watched all of this, thank you. Please like it and subscribe. If you didn't like it and you watched all this way, great. Thank you very much for watching. Um, we'll put
And
another
comment.
video out here in another week or two, hopefully, to cover the 10 o'clock turn. This was taking us about an hour here, Mark.
Mm,
So it's about ideal. Um, so we try to do these videos in half an hour to an hour increments so that they aren't like 3 hour slogs.
yeah,
Some people like those, but I think an hour is a good time. So
yeah.
anything else, Mark? Last closing
That's it.
words?
Yeah, and just invite any comments. I mean, I know the battle's already happened now. You can't influence what's happened, but any comments or criticisms
Yes.
or corrections, whatever, always welcomed.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
watching.
That would be helpful, although you're not actually seeing us play and make the mistakes that we can make while we're actually moving pieces and rolling dice. Um, you might see maneuver things that we didn't think of or something like that. So yeah, thank you very much again. See you next time, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Bye
Cheers.
bye.